Among the many types of bow used by American Indians, the finest and strongest was the sinew-backed bow. It was constructed by laminating layers of sinew onto a base of hardwood. This bow was made by Ishii, last of the Deer Creek Yana Indians. He made it in 1915 at the University of California's Anthropology Museum, then located in San Francisco, where he lived and demonstrated his crafts until his death in 1916. During past centuries, a number of tribes in Northern California made sinew-backed bows and traded them out among surrounding tribes. The center of sinew-backed bow making in California appears to have been the lower Klamath River region during those remote times. It is here that the Yurok made the best bows and gained a reputation among surrounding tribes of being the finest bowyers. This is one half of a Yurok bow. Its hand grip on the left is constricted for ease in grasping. From this center, the width expands to its broad limb, which then gradually narrows to the nock at the end. The Yurok bow may be compared to this other type of sinew-backed bow, a bow typical of those made by tribes to the east and south of the Yurok area. This head-on view of their limbs shows how much broader and more lenticular is the limb of the Yurok bow. Shown in profile, the very thin edge of the Yurok bow is compared with the greater thickness of the other. Its very broad and extremely thin limbs are characteristic of the excellent bows made by the Yurok in centuries past. The yew tree of Northern California provides the best wood for bow making. It is both strong and flexible. One young tree will yield enough material for several bows. Rough bark, willowy branches, and fine needles distinguish the yew tree from other conifers. It is important to select a tree from a secluded, shady place. If exposed to the extremes of weather, a tree will develop many knots and a twisted grain. Grown in the protection of a canyon bottom, a tree will develop straight, even grain with few knots. Because sinew-backed bow making is now lost, revival of this craft depends upon the memory of a Yurok named Homer Cooper, who lives in the mountains northeast of the Klamath River. Nearly 70 years ago, Homer watched a tribal patriarch make these bows. Today, he still recalls each step. After felling the yew tree with the aid of fire, he splits the log using elkhorn wedges. A third wedge driven into the side finishes the splitting. With a primitive hand adze, the rough surface is dressed down and smoothed as Homer forms the stave. To avoid checking and splitting, the wood must be carefully seasoned. After being partially worked, it was put away to cure in a cool, shady place. A rasp is made by breaking a carefully selected stone in a way that will present a very rough surface. This one is embedded with sharp quartz crystals. The rasp is used to shape the bow into its characteristic form. Bows were usually made by professional craftsmen. However, any tribesman might make a bow. After the bow has been shaped into its final form with the stone rasp, its rough surface must be made very smooth. The dried stems of equisetum, or horsetail rush, are used for this purpose. This use of the rough stem by the Indians led to another common name, Indian sandpaper. When the wood is completely smooth, The bow is bent, tied with a string, and further seasoned. The sinew will be laminated onto the concave surface. This adds great strength to the bow when it is strung the opposite way for shooting. This very advanced technique incorporates what today we call pre-stressed construction. A very strong glue is made from this air bladder of the sturgeon. Sometimes either fish skin or the glands at the gills are added, but glue made only from the bladder is an excellent adhesive. The glue will be used to join the sinew fibers to the back of the bow and also as a flux for the paints to decorate it. It is also used in arrow making. Homer makes the glue in the traditional manner by chewing the bladder. This small steatite paint bowl is ready to hold the glue. As the glue is made, it is spit into the bowl. This glue keeps well and may be prepared even months in advance. Softened by heat, the glue is used hot or at least warm. Deer sinew may also be prepared in advance. It is pounded to loosen its individual fibers. This ancient maul was found by Homer on an old village site. The pounded sinew is rolled between the palms to loosen the fibers. Pounding and rolling continue until the fibers become shredded in order to separate them. This process transforms the dried sinew, seen on the left, into these fluffy white fibers. Dried sinew from the back of the deer is required. It cannot come from any other part. A coat of sturgeon glue is applied to the back of the yew wood and worked very carefully onto the surface. From one of the bundles of sinew, Homer first selects a small number of fibers. After shredding, the curled fibers need straightening. These are straightened so they will be parallel and not crisscross when applied. The fibers are pressed into the coating of glue. Additional fibers are applied, layer upon layer, to form the strong lamination. More glue is added so the fibers will be completely embedded. The wood itself is so thin that it has very little strength and serves mainly as a base for the layers of sinew, which give the bow its real strength. The back of the bow is now concave. When completed, it will be strung for shooting by reversing this bend, by the method known as elbow bracing. This back then will become the convex surface that faces the target. The tension caused by stringing the bow against this pre-stressed sinew back provides great resistance to the archer's pull. This resistance gives the bow its strength and power, resulting in a quick or brilliant cast of the arrow. Between successive layers of sinew backing, the bow is allowed to dry, and any uneven spots are smoothed by sanding with equisetum. This entire process requires several days. After all the backing has been applied, the nocks must be reinforced with special care. Long strands of sinew are selected. Homer dips the sinew into the glue. He adds the sinews to the knock, leaving about